All right, folks, welcome back into the high school huddle, bringing you all your Section 5 high school action coverage you can ever possibly hope for. I'm AJ Feldman. Guy next to me virtually is Carl Jones, breaking everything down. We've got sectional finals coming up in football for Class A, semifinals everywhere else, all the other sports. We've had sectional finals. We're on to states. We're just getting to our sectional finals. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on. Luckily, this week around, it seems like the weather is going to be a whole heck of a lot better for this week covering these outdoor games as we are looking up to the heavens above, thinking, praying that hopefully we stay rain free because it was bad last week.
Yeah, I'm definitely getting introduced to the life of a sports reporter where, just rain or, higher or low water, however that phrase goes, you just gotta just roll with the punches, man. But I mean, it's all for the kids.
A lot of water. That's what that phrase is lasting. A lot of water.
Yeah, a lot of water for real. But I mean, it's all for the kids. And even though it was tough for us, I'm sure they have fun being able to fight for another week to play football. So, I mean, shout out to all those who are out there playing in all the conditions. I mean, a couple of those were very, very muddy. So shout out to those kids for making it through.
Yeah, your Spencer Ports of the world, your low level, your C's and D's playing in the mud. I mean, obviously we can't beat all these games. We're just looking at these scores for some of these Class C games, Class D games. They're like 6-0, 12-6. I think what I remember, we had like 8 scoreboard graphics of this Class C and D and B's. I think the losing team only got to double digits once, just because it was just so sloppy, so muddy. We had games where nobody got to double digits. It's a good week to get on turf, that's for sure. I know that a lot of these fields are beat up for good. We'll see the conditions of some of these fields if we get out, look at some of these scores of these games. But yeah, it was bad. Luckily, all our cameras stayed dry. We stayed dry for the most part. You should have seen the sports office, everybody, afterwards. It is, 20 articles of clothing laid out on every possible surface trying to dry this things off. But yeah, I mean, like you said, all for the kids, but, a lot of rain.
A lot of rain. Yeah, it reminded me of my playing days where you got to go in the locker room and just find any space in that small locker that you had to put some clothing up so it could dry, and it was the same thing for us. We were trying to find vents, chairs, tables, just anything where we can find it, because that wasn't going to go home with me that night. I'll tell you that was my car. So it's just like, it was definitely an eventful Friday night, and I'm just happy that we came out and the camera came out all good, intact.
Yeah, so looking ahead to this upcoming week, we've got Class A championships. These are a couple matchups we've been really looking forward to all season long. We're going to start off with the A1 championship. I would say probably the game of the week. UPrep and Brighton. Now, these two teams met early in the season. It was Brighton winning 21-19 in a really close game that Thad was at. That game was just really down to the wire. That was the game that Jordan Jackson got hurt. UPrep star wide receiver committed to Central Connecticut State. A really tough injury, out for the year with a leg injury. He's, grinding out, trying to come back, being a practice support like that. But we've both, these are two teams that have been playing some really good football down the stretch. You got your Brennan Klasgens, your Taj Jacksons from Brighton, your Clyde Davis Jr., you've got your Ray Kim Chenier, and just a great offense and your Sherrod Watkins of UPrep. So this is going to be a heavyweight battle for sure in A1.
100%. And the names that you just brought up in this time of year where the teams are kind of relatively evenly matched, is going to come down to those guys. Those guys making key plays and key moments to find a way to put their teams on top. Because, I mean, you've already played the team earlier in the year. You have about 9 games on film that the other team has to see. So, like, there's no surprises at this point, right? Like, what the other team is going to give you. So it's going to be up to your guys, the guys that you trust, to go above and beyond the playbook, above and beyond the expected, to make plays and to will their teams to victory. And like you said, there's a plethora of players on both sides that can make that happen. So, I mean, I can't wait for this one. I mean, both teams have been battle tested. They play close games. They play games where the games have been handled in the first half, right? So, I don't think this game will be like the latter, but it'll be a heavyweight matchup, like you said. And I can't wait to see how this one turns out.
Yeah, I'm going to be interested to see how Brighton decides to shut down Rakim Shanir and Sherrod Watkins. Even last week, a really strong Schrader defense. They held UPrep relatively in check. They only scored twice, but one of them was on a long Rakim Shanir touchdown. The other one, another Shanir touchdown. Brighton's got a strong defense. We'll see what they can do with that attack. And then Brighton's been running the ball a lot lately. In that game against Thomas last week, I believe Glasgow's only completed and attempted one pass. Now, granted, this was, tsunami, rainstorm, so you're not going to really air it out. But, you're going to need both teams has to figure out a way to not just be, Taj Jackson and Brennan Glasgow's, not just find a way to be Rakim Shanir, can Mark McClary get going for UPrep? Can Brighton, create some vertical passing to their game? I think that's going to be a big determination to who comes out with that one. The other thing I want to know, UPrep, I've seen quite a handful of their games. They do have they oftentimes in their game, they get some big plays called back by penalties. They've gotten behind schedule on, false starts, delay games. So in a game where the margin is that tough, it's one thing if you're playing Gates Chila and you get a long touchdown, called back by, a hold, a punt return touchdown called back. I've seen that happen before this year. You don't get that many chances against a team like Brighton. So it's going to be up to them to really play a strong, technically sound game to go up against a team that hasn't been defeated all year.
That's a great point that you bring up, because at this time of year, you got to be clicking on all cylinders, whether that's the tangibles, the things that you can control, and then the intangibles, right? So when it comes to just keeping your head on straight and not committing like silly penalties, as you talked about, that's huge in a game like this, because in a game like this, you always want to be on script and on schedule, right? Because the second that you get off script is the second that things start to go haywire, and that's the start when you start to, like, I guess you can just say, start to overdo things and try to do too much, and then when that starts to happen, turnovers, penalties, frustration starts to set place and creep in. So it's like in a game like this, you got to be clean, and you have to make sure that everything stays on schedule, because a playoff game, things get a little bit more tense. And like you said, when you get a long touchdown call back in the regular season, all right, cool, like we're gonna get it back, and it's against Gates Chila, cool, I'll get it the next play, right? That's not happening against a team like Brighton or the further that you go on to the playoffs. Teams are getting much better, and the chances that you're going to get those 70, 80-yard long touchdown runs are few and far in between. So it's like you got to play a clean football game this time of year.
And another thing that'll make this game a good one. Both quarterbacks, Brennan Glasgow, Clyde Davis Jr., multi-year starters, both great at keeping the ball. They don't commit a lot of turnovers. I don't know if I've seen a turnover from any of these guys when I've seen them play this year. Obviously, I'm sure there are some, but they do a great job of protecting the football. We'll be sure it'll be just a great game to watch. The other game in Class A, we talk about staying on schedule, not committing penalties. This game, Canandaigua Spencerport, they played in the regular season 31-13 Canandaigua. Spencerport played them tight in the first half. Things got away. I was at this game. Last year when they met in the sectional semifinals in Class A, last year being this past spring. Spencerport's going to have to play a perfect ball game to beat Canandaigua. They can do it. They play them 10 times. Maybe we give one of them to Spencerport, but Canandaigua was just good. They're good in every facet of the game. It's going to be really tough to beat them. Spencerport has their work cut out for them this upcoming Friday night against Canandaigua.
And I think that what we talked about a little bit earlier, I think this is kind of like a battling of philosophies when it comes to like a coaching style. Spencerport, their idea is, we know what we're gonna do. We know what we're gonna do. What we do is better than anything that you can provide that you can stop, right? And then on the other hand, Canandaigua was like, we're so versatile in so many different ways. Try to key on one thing and we'll do the other. So it's an interesting battle of philosophies. And Spencerport, everyone in the stadium knows what the 3 plays are that Spencerport's going to run, right? It's either up the middle, quarterback, we get it, right? And on the other hand, Canandaigua, up the middle, deep passes, short passes, trick plays, special teams, like the defense sometimes can create and score for them. So it's a interesting style that usually, in my opinion, this late in the year, you want to be versatile because you don't want to be predictable. And as Canandaigua has shown over the past few matchups they have with Spencer Porter, they do a pretty good job of knowing what's coming and stopping it. So we'll see if Spencer Porter maybe can provide a couple wrinkles, because I mean, you don't want to be stubborn in your philosophies to a fault. So it'll be a good one, like you said. I'm interested to see if Spencer Porter can change some things up and see if they can finally take down the Braves.
Yeah, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but I remember reading some previews of the regular season matchup. It's been quite a while since Spencer Port has been able to beat Canandaigua, multiple years at that. And like you said, in that regular season game, Spencer Port did everything right in that first half. They recovered an onside kick to start off the game. They got points on both of their drives. They had long sustained a touchdown drive. They kept the clock moving. They tried to shorten the game as much as possible. They forced a turnover in the first half. It wasn't close to being enough. It was 31-13 final. Canandaigua, they got a big punt return touchdown, or a big punt return that led to a touchdown in the second half. It's just really tough to beat them. And I think they might have to go a little bit out of their comfort zone. They're gonna win this game based on their triple wing offense, or the double wing offense. But they've busted out some like reverse passes, short stuff, nothing crazy down the field, but they might have to do that more often because they're gonna have to figure out some way to crack Canandaigua. It's a really tough task to do. This is no disrespect to Spencerport. This is like you're one of your SEC teams trying to beat Alabama. Like you got to be on your game. You got to do everything you can. It's just tough to do, and we'll see if they can do it. They're still ranked number 3 in the state. We expect them to go on a pretty deep run if they can make it through Section 5, which they're favored to do, and someone's gonna have to beat them eventually, or they're just gonna win it all, which they very well might. It's gonna take a good effort by anybody who beats them.
Yeah, good point for sure. You just got to make sure you stay on schedule and on script, like we talked about earlier with the previous game. So, because with that double wing
and be perfect. No pressure. You just got to be perfect. You got to force turnovers. You got to not commit turnovers. You got to make big plays. You got to stop big plays. I mean, come on. How hard is it? Just go out and do it.
The 2nd and 13 will not be a good thing for this game.
Maybe Spencerport could have petitioned to play this game on the Spencerport muddy field.
Now, if that was the case, I'm not a gambling man by any means, but man, that would be an interesting split. That game was
that would adjust the line a little bit. But no, they're playing at that one's going to be played over at Schrader, I believe. I think is where it's at. Turf field for all these games, neutral sites. Moving on to Class AA, these all these other classes are still in the semifinals because next week the Class A schools are going to play each other to be the state representative to be Class A. AA, we've got McQuaid and Victor. These two teams met early in the regular season, 29-6. McQuaid with the big win. We kind of expect this to be maybe a similar score. Victor had a nice showing against Hilton, but they're going to have to put an even nicer showing against McQuaid to come up with that win. We'll see if Zay Collier plays. He did leave their Pittsford game after taking a big hit over the middle of the field bye week last week. So we don't know anything about that. Certainly, we hope to see him out there. The big one to watch for in this one, Aquinas at Pittsford. These two teams met in mid-September, 42-21 the final with Aquinas winning. But this is a much different Pittsford team than played them in September. They've got Jackson Green back. And this is going to be, if it a championship level matchup in the semifinals. And it's going to be really great to see Aquinas and Pittsford playoff in the semifinal matchup.
Yeah, 100%. I can't wait for this because I haven't gotten a chance to see Pittsford yet this year. Heard a lot of great things about them and Jackson Green, as we talked about at hand on this podcast. But also, the return of Will Benjamin for Aquinas, and man, was his impact felt last week? They jumped out to an early lead last week on Fairport, I believe.
Yeah, Fairport. Yep.
And it was 20-0 in the first quarter. They with Will Benjamin in the fold, they have a multitude of ways that they can attack you and come at you. So with Amaje Giddens and him, it's just Michael White. It's with him back in the fold that makes that offense that much more dangerous. And that wasn't the team that I saw previously against Hilton. Against Hilton, they struggled to move the ball at times. I'm not going to say the entire game because they still put up like in the mid-20s, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
But with Will Benjamin in the fold, that's a different team. I can't wait for this one. Like we talked about earlier with the Brighton U Prep game. There's stars everywhere on this game in this matchup. So once again, whose star is going to be able to rise to the top and make the key play at a key moment, whether it's a 3rd and long when you need a conversion, whether your offense is in a rut, you just need a play.
Mm-hmm.
Who is going to be that guy? So I mean, we'll see who steps up, and this is what you dream of when you're a kid. Like, you want to be in this moment, or like in the playoffs, being the guy who pushes your team to the next round, right? Like, so I can't wait to see who grabs that moment and runs with it.
Yeah, and Jackson Green obviously attracts extra attention anytime he's out there wide. Last week it was the Nick Senko show for Pittsford. Big, it was a wet game, as we have obviously mentioned. He scored 4 touchdowns, had over 200 yards on the ground. So that's another dynamic threat they have to worry about. Jackson Green on the outside, Nick Senko up the middle, and like you said, Amaje Giddens. It's not just the Will Benjamin show. Obviously, Will Benjamin adds an entirely different dimension to that offense, but they have multiple ways to beat you, both of these teams. I'm sure these coaching staffs have been devising all kinds of strategies and plans. They've been up all night this week. Their wives have barely seen them at all this week, trying to figure out this game plan. It's going to be a big test. And, this is why we mentioned in this regular season when it was coming down the stretch, once we saw Pittsburgh was legit, having that 1 seed of McQuaid, no offense to Victor, you get a team like Victor. It's a lot different than getting a team like Pittsford in that round. Who knows if Victor can pull off the upset? They're riding high, but I'm sure McQuaid is very happy to not be seeing Jackson Green this early in the playoffs.
I say so. I mean, I'm not going to bet on it, but I say so.
I would say so as well. Class B action, semifinals. We got HFL, Honolulu Falls Lima, taking on Dansville Waco. These teams did not meet in the regular season, but HFL undefeated for the regular season. They've had a great season coming off their sectional championship. Dansville Waco's got their hands full. They have not been able to compete with the upper tier teams so far in Class B. They played Batavia just a few weeks ago. It wasn't particularly close. So HFL probably should take care of business there. The other big one, another great 2-3 matchup where we talk about having that 1 seed's important. Batavia and Wayne. Both of these teams played HFL super tight, 1-point games in the regular season. These Batavia and Wayne did not meet in the regular season. Mason Blankenberg did not play in their quarterfinal matchup, so we'll see if the Wayne star quarterback can go. That would certainly be an X factor, to say the least. But these 2 teams have shown that they're more than worthy of their ranking, and this should be another great game as well, and a great 2-3 matchup.
Yeah, 100%. I've seen both teams. I think once this year I saw Batavia taking on HFL, and that was I think that was my introduction to the 5A5 football, with just the atmosphere and how good of a game it was all the way down to the wire. So I know both teams are excellent in that regard. And also, I've seen Wayne this year. I saw them try to take down the ER Granada Bombers. That was a close game that they just ran out of gas at the end, and the Bombers just pulled away. But I could tell from that game, though, they were still a fantastic football team. So, like you said, it's going to be a fantastic one. We talked about this last week a little bit, but just the lower that you get in the divisions, and this obviously isn't Class C or D, but just it's a certain feeling with the smaller schools, and the feeling that the football has with it. And like when we're getting to these close matchups, like we have with Wayne and Batavia, man, it's going to be some proud parents Friday night.
Yeah, and we've dubbed this year the year of the extra point. This game's officially on PAT watch, where these teams might score the same amount of touchdowns and not come up with the same amount of points. So I'm just gonna kind of throw that out there to the universe. This game's officially on year of the PAT watch. That's how close we think this game might be this time around. Moving on to Class C, we've got East Rochester Gananda taking on Letchworth Warsaw Perry. These 2 teams met in week 1 of the regular season, 32-14, the final. East Rochester Gananda, we've liked them all season long. And Leroy taking on Haverling, another strong 2-3 matchup. None of these two teams played, those two teams did not play in the regular season. Most likely playing for the Reds to take on East Rochester Gananda, who it has been the favorites in Class C all year long. And at this point, we have no reason to think otherwise.
Yeah, I don't have any reason. They've played well in Class C, and they've also taken down Wayne, who was a formidable opponent in Class B. So the Bombers are a fantastic ball club, and I'm looking forward to see if they can handle business this week and possibly next week as well.
In Class D, top-seeded, highly state-ranked Oakfield, Alabama Elba taking on Calamum Byron Bergen. This game was a big blowout in their regular season matchup, 50-15. And then in Class D, Avon taking on Alexander, a low-scoring affair to start in the regular season, 12-10 with the Avon win. So, you know, like we said, these small schools, sometimes it comes down to just the littlest margins. Avon Alexander, they've played some tight games over the years. They met in I believe that was the sectional championship game last year. And I think Avon won pretty handedly that one. So another good matchup in Class D that we've got.
I haven't seen any of these teams, unfortunately, just because of the way our schedules worked, and but they always on my radar and close and near to dear in my heart with my agenda when it comes to small schools and football in small towns. So I hope that everyone comes out of this game relatively safe and healthy, and that the great games and that they are not played on grass like they were last week, and a little bit more scoring and not as much 6-0 football game.
Yeah. And yes, it was Avon last year in the Class D championship game, 42-7 over Alexander. So I'm sure Alexander certainly remembers that game, and they want a little bit of revenge this time around, maybe knocking off the 2-seeded Avon Braves. And then in Class 8, in 8-man football, Red Jacket versus Pembroke in one semifinal, Frewsburg versus Canisteo Greenwood. You know, it's the Red Jacket show until anyone can say otherwise. I don't think we have too much to say about this other than Red Jacket's good, and we'll see if anybody can take them down in this Class 8-man tournament.
I think they're all right.
They're pretty good. All right, so there's all our football breakdown. Time to head into some of the other sports. Carl has been Mr. Soccer this week, covering all these sectional championship games. He said some great ones, some tight ones, some ones that technically didn't even have a winner. We took the PKs. The entire sports office is not the biggest fan of that rule, but we can maybe get that into a little bit later at a different show. Carl, you've seen a lot of soccer, especially in the past week. A lot of sectional finals. We'll start with what you've seen from the girls' side. What was the biggest thing that stood out to you over the past week or so?
That girls' soccer team that resides in Spencerport is pretty decent at the sport. I would say no. They're a phenomenal team. I mean, they're deep, and I think the one thing that I noticed, because I've seen them a lot this year, but seeing them in this setting, obviously they're talented. They have a few Division I commits on that team, young and old. But I think the one thing that I took away from this game is how passionate they were. And it's funny, when I saw that you did a story on them, and one of the pictures that you used was a picture of Alyssa Hackett with doing like that, and she did that to the Brighton student section, which cracked me up.
We love it. We love to see it.
We love to see. I love the chitter chatter and the yapping back and forth. I love it. And that type of energy is contagious. Shout out to Jarvis.
Oh, they've got moxie. They've got mad moxie over there at Spencerport.
Contagious. Shout out to Jarvis Landry. But it's so infectious, and that type of energy. Obviously, when you're a talented team, that obviously is first and foremost the most important thing. But the intangible things such as that just swagger, that no matter what, we feel like that we're going to be in control of this. That matters this time of year when the margin starts to, with the talent margin starts to dwindle down a tad bit. And I mean, whether you got Kendall Mesh, Cameron Mesh's little sister in the back, holding down the fort, and then you got Brita Hahn, Lee Brongo, Alyssa Hackett, like they're all up front, doing their thing. That team from front to back, top to bottom, they are legit just a bunch of girls who just, no matter what, they always feel as if they're going to come out on top. So shout out to them for that. And then the Penfield Fairport game, I know technically both teams technically our Class AA champion, so I want to give them credit for that. And we'll revisit that rule at another date, like we talked about. But just shout out to Penfield. There's I think they're 16 and one on the year or something like that. They're 16 and 1 on the year. They're similar to Spencerport. The record is almost flawless. And shout out to them for advancing to states. And that was just another game where it was hard fought to the end and cold, but and then that was just a fun game, to say the least.
Yeah, I was out at Spencerport this week doing a story on them, and I think you're right. I think they have the perfect mindset where they know to respect all of their opponents. They know that they have to be strong, but at the same time, they know they're really damn good. And I think they have the perfect mindset of in these big games, you need to have not, it's very important to respect your opponent, take things one game at a time, all those good cliches. It helps to have some confidence in yourself when and they were saying like it's really funny hearing about what their success is measured against, because they talk about that Brighton game and in the championship game. They're like, we had some troubles. It was 1-1 early. It was 3-2 at the half. Like that's their panic meter for this season. Like a 1-1 game, like being up 3-2 at the half. 2 was the most number of goals they've given up all year, and one of them was an own goal where obviously you don't want to give those up, but it's not really indicative of the way your defense played. They've given up 6 goals all season long. They are at 14 clean sheets in 19 games, and just want to give out some more shout outs. It's Emma Taylor in the back on defense leading the way for them. I asked one of their players, I believe it might have been Lily Brongu, who said it. I was like, so what makes your defense so good? They were like, we have an Emma Taylor. Like, it just really helps when you have that. It's just, they're at a different level. They've got a pretty tough matchup in their Far West regional game against Grand Island. That is the Section 6 representative. They are also very pretty highly ranked in the state. As I try and bring it up right now, Spencerport, they've actually been more well respected in national rankings. They're 3rd in the state right now. They're actually tied for 8th in the country, which I mean, here's your Minnesota background. The top team is Edina. They lost today, so there's going to be some movement in the top. Edina out in Minnesota. There, you're breaking news from the things I see on my Twitter feed from spending 2 years in Minnesota. So not everybody's in cable. Yeah, Grand Island, they're 4th in the state right now in the Class A rankings. Spencerport 3rd, so they're going to have their hands full the rest of the way. Not that there are any easy games, but there's no easy more games for Spencerport the rest of the way. And then Carl, you were a lot of boys soccer games. What do you got for us there? A lot of dramatics in those boys soccer games.
Yeah, I would say so. And similar to Spencerport, the Hilton game kind of got me the same vibe of not necessarily maybe the same level of dominance as Spencerport, but there's a certain moxie and swagger that the Hilton team has that was just apparent from Cody Cavuto on down.
Cody Cavuto, baby.
Oh yeah, the Cody Cavuto show. He scored 2 goals, and once again in the first half, and that was all they needed because their defense kept Miles Palmer in check and didn't really allow him to do much of anything. I can't really remember it. Even he had a shot on goal. Like, that's how impressive their defense was. But that was an impressive game. I've seen them a few times, and Cody Cavuto stood out both times because he's pretty darn good at the football sport. That was just a phenomenal game. I can't wait to see how they do in the Far West Regional next. And then the other game in Class A that I was able to see was Sutherland versus Churchville Chi-Lai. Another game where it was 0-0 the entire regulation. Neither team could get much of anything going on offense. And then overtime, about 6 or 7 minutes in, they found a way to hit the game winner. Something that fooled me with the camera work just because of how the goal went. But it was just another great game. I'm happy this time of year that the games are a little tighter, so I asked for a little bit of drama at the end. So shout out to the Knights for advancing, and shout out to the Cadets and the Cody Cavuto show for putting on the show.
Yeah, those four teams in Class AA all this season: McQuaid, Penfield, Fairport, Hilton. You knew that these were going to be some great semifinals and finals. Certainly live up to the challenge. And for Hilton to not that 2-0 is an easy win. It's certainly maybe more. It's a 2-goal game as opposed to a 1-goal game in overtime, which we've been seeing a lot of these times. So certainly that bodes well for their state chances. And then in Class A, Sutherland. I believe this is 3 in a row for Sutherland. Do I have that right?
Correct. This is the third straight sectional championship.
Yeah, and they beat Churchville Chili last year. It was a 2-0 game. So these are two teams that have a lot of respect for each other. I saw a little bit of the stream actually. You could just see the handshakes, the hugs at the end of the game, a well-fought battle. Both of those two teams, I think, have a strong chance to do something really well in the state tournament. Pittsford Sutherland ranked second in the state. So certainly, a state favorite to say the least. Taking things inside over to some volleyball action. We've gotten the matchup we've been waiting for all year. It's going to be Penfield and Victor in the Class AA championship game. I was at this game last year. You were at one of these games in the regular season. They ended up splitting in the regular season. Penfield eventually pulling off a sweep of Victor in the latter half of the season. When I was at this game last year, it was the Emma Workmeister show for Victor, by far and away, on a game and a match with many talented players. She was just at a step above. She was the difference in this game, or in that game last year. I'll be interested to see who else rises up to that level, whether or not Penfield can shut her down or contain her to a certain standard. And would not be surprised if this game goes 5 sets. That's just, how strong these two teams have been all year. Victor won in the state, Penfield number 2.
Yeah, like you said, I can't wait for that one. That game has some firepower to it on both sides, where the sounds of the kills are a little bit different in those. In that matchup.
It's like when you're golfing with your buddies and you hear some drives or whatever. Then you go to like a PGA Tour event, and it just sounds differently. Everything sounds differently. That's the level of action in a Penfield Victor game.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to describe it. Yeah, it just sounds different when you're at that game, right? And then for the game that I went to last night, it was Sutherland versus Churchville Chili. And coming into it, Sutherland was the 1 seed. And I mean,
ranked number 4 in the state also, Sutherland. Churchville Chili, they didn't care.
No, they did not care one iota. I mean, they came out and dominated early, winning the first set 25-14. So clearly there was no fear in their hearts at all. And Sutherland eventually won game 2, but after that, it was all Chili. The student section for Churchville was phenomenal. I mean, they were at least 12 rows deep. It was unfortunate because the way that the security was, I had to film it next to the student section and not behind either. That's another story for a different day. But I was direct to the student section, and man, what I tell you, that they were passionate, into it. And when you're in an enclosed environment like that, as you know, that matters in a game like that, where any little thing can throw you off your hookup and you hear something from the crowd. But those girls out there on the court, regardless of the things outside the lines, they did their thing, especially Audrey Vo, when they needed a crucial point to settle things down and prevent and stop a huge Sutherland run that they went on at several times in the match. She put a stop to it. So shout out to the 5 seed taking down the number 4 team set ranked in the state.
Yeah, 4th in the state, Sutherland.
And then now they're meeting up with Irondequoit, who they split early in the regular season. They split their meetings in the regular season. So a 3-5 matchup for the Class A championship. That's definitely a little bit out of the ordinary, but I mean, hey, that's what you got to gain.
We've seen this in volleyball in the past, especially, I think the A bracket last year was also pretty crazy. I think it was a 7-8 matchup in the championship game last year. So there's a lot of upsets in these volleyball, these Class A's and B's that we see. So that should definitely be a good one as well. And you mentioned, these student sections. I've been around a lot of volleyball. My sister, she played high level club and went on to play D1. So I've been a lot of these volleyball matches. Student section matters. It's a lot of pressure. You get that timeout called when you're serving up 24-22, get a lot of time to think about your serve. It's a lot of pressure. I feel like just because of the start and stop nature, you have a lot of time to think in volleyball about what you're kind of doing. So certainly that makes a big difference as well. And then the other, the Class B matchup, HFL versus Wayne. HFL, you're defending sectional champs. These two teams have not met in the regular season, so we don't have a ton to go off of there, but that should be another great one as well. We'll see if HFL can build off their championship last year and make it 2-0 and try and go on a state tournament run.
This is another game that, hopefully it's a good one and not a sweep, and everyone that's at the game gets their money's worth. And
then boys volleyball. We haven't seen a ton of boys volleyball. We'll quickly touch on what we've got in Class B. One of our they're in the semifinals right now. Class B semifinal is set. One of them at least, Spencerport and Irondequoit. Spencerport has been the top dog in Class B all year. This semifinal game will be a rematch of last year's championship game where Spencerport won in the sweep. Spencerport swept them earlier this season. They also won another match. I believe it was in 5. Spencerport's only have 1 loss all season to Penfield, who is in the Class AA semifinals. It'll be Penfield and Fairport, who beat McQuaid, which is a big win. If you know anything about boys volleyball in this area, McQuaid is a tough out. They were in the finals last year, so props to Fairport. Fairport beat McQuaid in the quarterfinals after losing to McQuaid in the last game of the regular season, so certainly they were able to turn that one around. And then in the other Class AA semifinal matchup, it's Webster versus Victor Pittsford. Most likely, Victor Pittsford will play Edison earlier today. But Webster has already beaten Victor twice so far this season. And Carl, you actually saw Victor play McQuaid, who we thought, McQuaid was one of our top dogs. Penfield's obviously, I believe, very, very highly ranked. They're a well-deserved 1 seed, but a great showing by Victor to beat McQuaid. And who knows, maybe they can be kind of a dark horse in this AA bracket.
No, for sure, because I went to that McQuaid game, and McQuaid was they were legit. I mean, like there's no other way to say it. So for that to happen, I mean, wow, shout out to them for that. And as you talked about with the girls volleyball, where the things bounce a certain way, and just some days are just yours, and some days they're just not. So who knows what may happen, and we'll see how far Victor can take this.
And then we do have field hockey. Our Class B team is done. It was Pittsford Mendon, our sectional championship, beating Sutherland 2-0 in the Section 5 championship game. They lost in their first state tournament game in a penalty shootout to Vestal. So a tough end of the line for Mendon. Our Class A representative, Penfield, they will be playing this Saturday in the state tournament as well. They were able to defeat their opponent in their first round game. So Penfield is moving on. I saw Penfield in the sectional championship game where they were able to win 2-0. It was Gabby Curtis is taking over for Penfield right now. She scored both of their goals in the Class A championship game to beat Brighton in the first state tournament game they played. It was Gabby Curtis scoring with just over a minute, under 2 minutes left in the game to beat Maine Endwell to advance the regionals. So, Penfield hasn't had the strongest regular season. They lost to both Menon and Sutherland. It was kind of a situation this year where our Class B teams were strong in the regular season, the Class A teams. But, we'll see if Penfield can beat they've got Clarence on Saturday at Pittsford Sutherland High School. So a local game. Maybe that home field advantage will come into effect. But yeah, this is what we're getting down to. We're into state tournaments. We're into scouting our Section 6 Buffalo teams and things like that. It's a really fun time. We'll be here for all of it, especially as these football brackets really heat up. We've been going at it for quite a time. Carl, you got any last words for us here?
Nah, just it's gonna be the time of your lives out there for all the kids out there. So just have fun. Don't let the moment get too big, and that's all I got for you.
And savor every moment.
Savor. There we go. You feel me? The best pregame speech you ever heard.
All right. So we will be back here next week. There's a chance you're listening to this on Spotify right now. We're trying to get this up on Spotify in podcast form. Hopefully this gets on there in the future. So you'll be able to find this on rochesterfirst.com, eventually, possibly already on Spotify. We got lots of ways to get you all the Section 5 action It'll be myself and Carl Jones. Maybe Thad Brown will make a cameo every once in a while. But yeah, we are excited to bring you all this content. It's a great time to be a high school sports fan. I feel like I'm saying this every week because it's just been so dang good the past couple of weeks. But we will see you next Thursday on the High School Huddle. I'm AJ Feldman. He's Carl Jones. Have a great week of watching some Section 5 sports, and try and stay dry out there.